I was thinking I'll spend 10-15 minutes on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, and another 10-15 minutes I'll speak on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings. Right at the outset, I would like to take the blessings of His Holiness Amal Bhakta Swami Maharaj. From the other, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Actually, I have heard Maharaj's audiobooks since my very early days, various books. And Maharaj reads in a very crystal clear manner. So I will try my best to speak, following in your footsteps. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is called as the seventh Goswami in our line for various reasons. Because after Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned back to Godhead, his followers, the six Goswamis, they very faithfully executed their duties as he had ordered them. Excavating the holy places, establishing the temples, the deities, and worship of the deities, and compiling literatures based on the scriptures, and giving the bhakti conclusion very powerfully. Nana Shastra Vicharaneka Nipunau Saddharma Samstapakau. And amongst the Goswamis, the Jiva Goswami had three Shiksha disciples who were also very empowered. Sri Narottam Thakur, Shyamananda Pandit, and Srinivasa Acharya. Later on, every one of these personalities, they took the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya message to various parts of India, and they converted, the whole state, they made it into Vaishnavas, like Odisha, Manipur, and such places. Even today, if you go, you find so many Vaishnavas coming in that line. Subsequently, we find in our Sampradaya many Babajis resorting to seclusion, recluse, and doing more chanting and avoiding the public and preaching also. The main reason for that was, at that time, there was a large scale degradation, and Vaishnavas felt that in order to preserve our purity and sanctity, it is better to keep away from all kinds of materialism. So they chanted more rounds and absorbed themselves in puja and bhajan. Gradually, the number of Vaishnavas became lesser, and that went on for some time. At that time, many Apasampradayas broke out. Almost 13 Apasampradayas. There is a book by His Holiness Suhotra Swami Maharaj. It's a thin book. It's called Apasampradaya. If you want to know what kind of deviations came in our Sampradaya. For example, one of the Apasampradaya groups, they wear sari like a female and pretend to be gopis, imitating it's called Sakhi Beki. Similarly, there is another group which considers Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Krishna and themselves as gopis in the mood of a paramour love, which is not at all pleasing to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's called Gauranga Nagari. So there is Aula Baula is another category. Actually, Baul is a good word. Baul means Abhaduta, or a transcendently situated pure devotee. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. All right? Yeah. So, Aul Baul are people who are not exalted but pretending to be exalted just for the sake of popularity. So, those fellows also came. So, at that time when Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared in this world, in our Sampradaya, if you see, many Babajis came almost 200, 300 years. There were some Acharyas who are very unique, very special, like His Divine Grace, Baladeva Vidyabhushan, or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in our land. But otherwise, you find many Babajis in our line, and Vaishnavism became very And also the respectability of Vaishnavism had become very less because of cheaters, pretenders. So at that time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his coming in our time is a very vital point where Vaishnavism has blossomed in a very big way. Three personalities, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and our His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. These three great personalities have a big hand in expanding Krishna consciousness in a very big way. So I will say a little bit about what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. When he was a young college-going boy, he was more attracted to Christianity than Hinduism for one reason. He thought that most of the Hindus are doing worshipping multiple demigods, and they are also worshipping for material purposes, considering these demigods to be order suppliers, going to temple, ringing a bell, putting a coin, expecting some material profits in return. He didn't like that religion. Nor did he like the impersonalism, which denies the personality of God, where there is a pretense of surrender for merging into the Supreme. He hated that. So he was not satisfied. But Christianity appealed to his mind as a college student for one reason, because Jesus was teaching love of God, and the goal of Christianity was also love of God. There's a Father who is a person, and we are all His children. So that appealed to him. And as years passed by, he came across Chaitanya Charitamrita in his life for the first time. It wasn't easily available in those days, one copy. And that was a turning point in his life. When he read it, he had tears in his eyes. He said, this philosophy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, teaches who a real Vaishnava is. A Vaishnava is the most harmless species in the whole creation, because the Vaishnava cannot even harm an ant, and they are well-wishers of all living beings, and they have no expectations from anybody. So this is one definition Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave. Humility means no expectations from anybody. That's one of the definitions he gave. And a Vaishnava is simply satisfied by being nourished by chanting of the holy name and doing Nameruchi, Vaishnava Seva, Jivadaya, based on these three principles. And then when he read the scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, it made a lot of sense to him that the ultimate religion is pure love for God, which is unmotivated and uninterrupted, which is beyond all caste, creed, color, nationality, and any kind of sectarianism. So he said that this is not a religion belonging to some sect of people. This is actually religion of every soul. This occupation of every soul, the love of God. And this should be taught to everyone all across the globe. So that type of realization awakened in his heart. He was a very intelligent student, even in his college days. You will hear that as Kedarnath, as he grew up. I'll just show some of the things. It's not coming there. Okay, then I can just actually I have some 30-40 page notes on Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but I will only read one or two sections, like as he grew up. Whatever is relevant to our talk, we will only see. As a headmaster of Medinipur High School, Kedarnath studied many popular Bengali religious sects, particularly their philosophies and practices. He concluded they were all cheap. He came to understand that the only real religion that had ever been established in Bengal was that of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Unfortunately, his movement was not well represented at that time, and he couldn't even get a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita of the 16th century, although he was searching in many bookshops, libraries and all. So in this way it goes on. And then he was also a great writer. He wrote in 1863, Bhratra Samaj. He established an organization, which means it's like a brotherhood club, all the brothers. So, and also he wrote many poems also, 2 novel poems, Vijnana Gram and Sannyasi. So he was actually a writer and poet also. And at one time, in a place called Champarana, people used to worship a ghost in a banyan tree, and they said this ghost had an influence on the mind of the local judge, and whoever worshipped this ghost, the judge would give his verdict in favor of that person. That was what was like a assumption people made. When Kedarnath saw this, he engaged one father of one Pandit Ramabai, a famous girl scholar. Her father was also a reciter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he made him recite the whole Bhagavatam under the tree. After 1 month, the tree crashed to the ground, and that was the end of the ghost. Finished. So here it shows that how much he had this firm faith on one hand on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on the other hand on Srimad Bhagavatam. And then in Puri there is another pastime of Bhaktivinoda Thakur dealing with one fellow called Vishwaksen. This is an example of a pretender yogi. This yogi used to sit in front of fire and put his hair in the fire like this, put his face in the fire and show nothing is happening to him. He had two other fellows. He said, I am Vishnu, this is Brahma, and this is Shiva. Like that, there were two more men by the side. And they would fetch many women for him to do his Rasalila and his promiscuous activities. And that was going on, and many people feared him, thinking him to be Mahavishnu. He was a cheater. So even the British people feared him for one reason, because he had told all the people that I will drive away the British Raj and I will become the king of whole India. That kind of things he was declaring. So the British people deputed Bhaktivinoda Thakur to do the needful. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur had called him. He told this Vishwaksen that he went personally and told him, come to Jagannath Puri, you can take darshan of Jagannath, and we have something important to talk to you. But Vishwaksen offended Jagannath, saying that he is not Jagannath, I am Jagannath. I am the Lord of the universe, he was declaring. Why are you talking about the chunk of wood? Like that he offended the Lord. So immediately Kedarnath arrested the rogue and brought him to Puri. Of course, for arresting him, a lot of people were required. He was guarded by 3 dozen Muslim constables and 72 policemen from Cuttack. You can see. And along with him, the Brahma and Shiva were also arrested. Those two fellows also. They were taken to the court, and eventually, of course, he was put behind the bars, and he was still speaking, blabbering so many things. And then when his hair was cut, that was the end of his so-called mystic powers. But this I am telling you why, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so confident. His daughter had become feverish, high fever. People told Bhaktivinoda Thakur that you are offending that great Vishwaksen, therefore your daughter is suffering. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur got fever also. But he said, even if I have to die, I will make sure that he is given the proper treatment, even at the cost of my life. He was such a man of integrity that he said 18 days the trial lasted, after which that Vishwaksen died. So, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur remarked, yes, let us all die, but this rascal must be punished, he said. So which shows, how much he was concerned about driving out dharma dvajis. Dharma dvaji means a flag. Dharma dvaji means a person who puts the external symbols of a religious person, but who is a pretender and a debauchee. Such people should be rooted out. That was the feeling of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, and also in Puri, Kedarnath, he studied Bhagavatam with the commentary of Sridhara Swami, and he copied all the Satsandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. And also he specially studied Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In 1874 to 1893, he spent much time in seclusion chanting the holy name, and then he wrote several books in Sanskrit. Actually, he wrote more than 100 books. That is one thing anybody may be surprised, because he had 10 children. His wife Bhagavati, and then along with the 10 children, he had a big family, and he wrote 100 books. And how he could do that? Because he had such a schedule. And also he had a very smart way of rendering his duty as a High Court magistrate. Even the British were surprised how he could solve like 40-45 cases in a day. how he would handle. They would handle 10 or 12 cases on a regular basis. He was doing triple their work, more than that. So they observed that he would never hear people in the court for long wounded hours. He would tell them to put everything in writing. He will go through that and he will catch some bottlenecks in that case, which wherever he feels they are cheating. And he will ask only one or two questions and they will fumble and the case will be dismissed after that. So he would do like that. He was therefore he was appointed as one of the High Court magistrates. In those days, there were only 3 High Court magistrates in entire India. He was one of them. So, and then they made him the manager of the Jagannath temple, and he instituted very nice policies for the care of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, as well as all the important sites of the Puri, like Tota Gopinath and Haridas Thakur's Samadhi, and also the Siddha Bakul tree and all those things, Gambira. So he actually revived those places and made for good protection of those places. So in 1874, Bimal Prasad, or who was in future Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, he was born. So there are many, many pastimes. I am only telling one or two very important ones. Yeah, in 1881, Bhaktivinoda Thakur starts this Sajjan Toshini, the Vaishnava journal, in order to propagate the essential truths of Vaishnavism, which is Vaishnava Siddhanta. So he started that. He felt that unless people are taught this philosophy, many people have so many hodgepodge understanding of religion. So he started Sajjan Toshini. And he was deeply inspired by Srila Jagannath Das Babaji's Shiksha. He accepted him as his worshipable Shiksha Guru. So he was very smart in paying attention to the job on one hand and bhajan on the other hand. He was able to balance very nicely. He would actually do his duty in Puri, and also he would come to Vrindavan time to time. Actually, once he had met one very famous scholar and writer whose name was Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. He was the one who wrote that famous Vande Mataram. Very great Sanskrit scholar. So he spent 4 days with him and he preached Vaishnava culture to him. And Bankim Chandra completely changed his paradigms, thought process. Because earlier he had mundane speculations about Krishna. But now after hearing Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he understood the Vaishnava perspective. So here comes a very important point. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his times, he was very soft in his approach, in sitting with sometimes over 100 elite on one hand and very educated and scholarly people. Rich people, they were also scholarly, they were also elderly, senior citizens. So such kinds of people he would invite in groups, and he would speak to them the philosophy, because they were influencing the society, these people. Because they were very sober in their behavior, they were gentlemanly, but their conceptions about Srimad Bhagavatam was false conception. One example is, they were thinking that the demons in Vrindavan, Leela, it is more nice stories for the children, they were thinking. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote the book called as Krishna Samhita, where he brought out the importance of the demons in Vrindavan Leela. 21 demons and the equivalent anarthas they represent in our heart, and how our heart is also Vrindavan. Unless these demons are rooted out from our heart, one cannot experience blissful Krishna prema without hindrance. So when he explained this, all those people, their respectability for Bhagavatam shot up immediately. They immediately became followers of Bhagavatam. So here is Bhaktivinoda Thakur making such a approach to this refined people of the society. And this is one of the reasons why our Srila Prabhupada also, you will find that he went to the scientists and scholars, leaders of the society, writing letters to them, going and meeting them, gifting them copies of the Bhagavatam. That's the main reason, because those fellows are influencing the masses, and if their heads can be given the right direction, they would do great good. So, there is a book called as Chaitanya Upanishad, which was published by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, based on, it is actually a part of Atharva Veda, which is a very important book. At the time, the copies were not available. So he translated those Sanskrit texts into Bengali and English. So he published it, made it available. And this translation is called Amrita Bindu. It is Chaitanya Upanishad, part of the Atharva Veda. So like that, some very important sections he would take and he would publish. So he had a divine dream in 1887. So at that time, he decided to quit the government service and go to Vrindavan. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in his dream and told him, "You will certainly go to Vrindavan, but first there is some service you must perform in Navadvip. When will you do that?" Mahaprabhu asked like this and he disappeared. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur awoke. And then Bhakti Bringa Mahashay, he told him to apply for transfer to Krishnanagar. And then he went to Krishnanagar, and then there he did many, many amazing developments. One was locating Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. There were many money-minded people who wanted to take another place as birthplace for the money purpose. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur exactly located the birth spot of Mahaprabhu, which was approved by Jagannathdas Babaji, who in those days he was 148 years old. And he used to go in a basket lifted by his servant Bihari. So when he was taken to that spot, Jagannathdas Babaji jumped off from the basket and danced in that place. He said, "This is actually the place where Lord Chaitanya took birth," he said. And in that way it became confirmed. So, and then he saw that in Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jagannath Puri, he saw that the Hindu-Muslim riots were very difficult to stop because there were always, both parties were fanatical on a materialistic platform. You find any religion becomes divided into multiple tributaries, branches, you will find that splits and groups and all. It's mainly because people who are fanatical resort to one extreme and become like a frog in the well, and they fight with other groups. So he found the same thing. Then he decided that I will propagate the love of God religion. So he went to a place called Surabhi Kunj in Godrumdvip, and sitting there, not only he was chanting, he started the preaching movement, for which he wrote a book called as Godruma Kalpatavi. So based on that book only, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj has brought out a beautiful book called as Bhakti Vriksha Manual. So all the principles Maharaj says there, he has taken from the book Godrum Kalpatavi. To give you a very brief information about it, he had 2,500 Namahatta groups all across Bengal. And all of them were reporting to him once a week. Can you imagine? Every week. And he gave different names to them. He gave, some people were called sweepers. Some were called washermen, dhobis. So you wonder, what is this name? See, washerman means a person, like sometimes you keep a ink pen here, it becomes, smudged with lot of ink, correct, no? And very difficult to wash with soap. But you have to put some petrol or kerosene, or nowadays you call it as vanish, to remove that. Then you can remove it. So dhobi is that Vaishnava who can wash that kind of anarthas. He's called as dhobi. And sweeper means, he called himself a sweeper, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Sweeper means one who removes the dust of, karma, jnana, yoga from the heart of the jivas. He's called as a sweeper. And removes those seeds and plants only the bhakti lata bij, by which one will develop love of God. So he gave such names to the preachers. And the only qualification he said for a person to become a preacher is that he has to practice and preach pure love of God. And the disqualifications, he gave a long list, 40, 50 things he has given, what one should not have. If you read that book, it's a very interesting book, Godruma Kalpatavi, published also. It's available in the congregation ministry. Probably you'll get it in ISKCON congregation ministry. You may get the copy. Yeah. So in this way, see, it's amazing combination of bhajan on one hand, and also preaching and getting follow-up reports. And he will also publish in his magazine, these people are doing very good preaching, others can take inspiration from them, like that. He was also active in preaching, sitting in Godrumdvip like this. So now I wanted to say a little bit about the teachings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is also especially the duties that he has given for the grihasthas. That's very, I have highlighted some of them. Okay. I felt this is very important because certain specific pointers that he gives is very useful for the devotees. Nowadays, many office-going devotees ask, we have to deal with non-devotees in the office. So how do we, work in an office and not get carried away by the non-devotees? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Vaishnavas are intelligent. You don't have to tell them anything 100 times. If you say once also, they will catch it. By Lord's grace, he says. So he says there is only one principle, he says. Never affectionately hear from non-devotees. Be business-like, he says, while dealing with them. Just like if you go to your shop, you pay some money and you get a commodity and you push off. You don't have any relationship with the shopkeeper. Once the commodity is purchased, you go your way and he goes his way. This is the way you have to deal with non-devotees, he says, especially those who are averse to Krishna, are averse to taking an inspiration about Krishna consciousness. You have to deal with them in an official way, he says. And then there are others who are potential devotees who are willing to know what you are doing and they want to learn. They are called as innocent and non-blasphemous. Non-blasphemous and innocent. So to them we have to show affection and compassion and inspire them to come closer to Krishna. And also another important thing he says, no matter how intelligent a non-devotee may be, even if you have to learn something from a non-devotee, he says that do not reveal your mind in confidence and do not listen from them faithfully, he says. Actually, he says, here lies the problem of bad association. He says, generally we only should open our mind in confidence to a Vaishnava devotee. To others, we should not, because when you are opening your mind in confidence, you become very vulnerable to whatever they plant in your mind. So therefore, it should be done only with devotees. And then he goes on to say that, traveling in the same boat or bathing in the same ghat is not association, he says. Sometimes we think if we are around that non-devotee, then we are associating. No. He says you may bathe in the same ghat or travel in the same boat, but it's not association. Association means three things. It is called as knowledge transmission, heart transformation, or spiritual discussion, knowledge transmission, heart transformation. That is called association. So you can only do spiritual discussion with the Vaishnava, not with the impersonalist, and not with the karmi jnana yogi. Therefore, spiritual discussion should be done with devotees. And then there can be a knowledge transmission and heart transformation. So that is actually proper association. Another thing he talks about wife and family. Even he himself set an example, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He accepted a wife, and otherwise one should not live single, alone, without proper ashrama. One should live surrounded by renunciates, or one should live at home with a suitable wife, he says, and one should not hanker after another's wife or prostitutes, he says. And then he says, while maintaining a religious family with one's wives, sons and daughters, born in the form of Krishna's servants and maid servants, to nourish them is called maintaining the family. And in these activities, there is a need for piously accumulated wealth, he says. That means a man should see his wife and children as Krishna's servants and maid servants. Like that one should see, he says. They are all meant to be engaged in Krishna's service. And he himself engages and he engages them also. So this is about the wife and family. Then about education, he says, one should not study atheistic literatures and one should be educated at a proper age. Another point he is stressing on is serving the superiors and serving the guests. In that he says, serving guests is the principal duty of a grihastha. And then he also says, also to serve the superior persons is also a principal duty of a grihastha. He quotes Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for all these things. And then he says, it's also duty of grihastha to chant the holy names of the Lord and serve the Vaishnavas and the Lord with the help of relatives and by the wealth he has earned through his pious life. Regarding serving the Vaishnavas, one should know that there are three types of non-duplicitous devotees, like Kanishtadhikari, Madhyamadhikari, Uttamadhikari. Serving such Vaishnavas is called Vaishnava Seva, he says. So actually, why he is specifically mentioning this? Uh, Many people ask, is it not important to serve the poor or serve the needy, serve the sickly, and such people? Actually, 99% of the social welfare organizations, if you see, or even spiritual organizations nowadays, they work for this sickly and needy and poor and such people very easily. But spiritual understanding, nobody has. It's extremely rare. Uh, So, Srila Prabhupada used to say, uh, if you simply save the drowning man's coat, but allowed the drowning man to drown, uh, that would be foolishness, because uh, you have not saved the soul. So, therefore, it's very important that the service is done to the Vaishnavas. And for example, a Grihastha's duty is to invite others to home and call the Vaishnavas and have a katha of Srimad Bhagavatam or something, and distribute the prasadam and distribute the holy name. By doing this, individual also progresses and others also will make progress. So, and also in inviting guests, he says, don't invite too many guests, he says. There is no need to gather many Vaishnavas by invitation for prasad, because whenever a Vaishnava comes for any purpose, he should be properly served with care. By gathering many Vaishnavas, one may commit offenses, he says. Sometimes people feel that I will invite 20 sannyasis to my home. It's very easy to invite, and you can click photos and video and tell people so many came to my home, but then we may fall short in serving them attentively. So he says, take care, he says. Yeah. And yeah. And then he also says that one should act with simplicity in dealings and do not allow any kind of cheating or duplicity in one's heart. So, okay, for Grihasthas, another very important thing is about renunciation. How should they do renunciation? Same principle what Lord Chaitanya told Raghunath Das Goswami. He also says the same thing. He says, Bahare Vyavahar Antare Nishtha, he said, which means manage your business externally, meditate on Krishna internally. Don't show your renunciation externally. He says here, a householder should take the principles of renunciation to heart, but he should not dress as a renunciant. A householder should fully depend on the will of the Lord in all his activities. In this way, one should execute his duties. Like Raghunath Das externally appeared to be like a Pounds and Shillong man, Prabhupada says. He was doing business, parents were very happy. But his heart was sold out to Krishna, he says. So these are some of the teachings for the Grihasthas. And then with respect to others, he says that, even if you're frustrated in life, he says, one should not desire to give up his body merely out of some sentiment or anger, he says. And also he says that one should feel satisfied with whatever food and clothing Lord arranges without difficulty. Yeah. One last thing I will say and conclude. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave 5 principles, which so he says that this is a very nice song he wrote called as Chant Anyway. I will just tell you this one song. Sorry. This is the one. He says, your mind is wandering all over the universe when you chant. Chant anyway, he says. Your mind is wandering to the past and future when you chant. Chant anyway. You are not able to concentrate on Krishna's names when you chant. Chant anyway. You have no taste for chanting. Chant anyway. You have lusty desires. Chant anyway. Chant. Yeah. Holy name. Yeah. Chant the holy name. And then he says, you are not praying to Krishna to help you chant, but chant anyway, he says. So the whole idea is, this is a part of Sharanagati. It's quoted from Adi Purana. There's a verse also here. So the holy name has appeared solely for the benefit of the living entities as their Lord and Master, their supreme worshipful object, and their spiritual guide and mentor. Whoever continuously chants Lord Krishna's holy name, even in his sleep, can easily realize that the name is a direct manifestation of Krishna himself. in spite of the influences of Kali Yuga. He says that is the whole point. He says that in Kali Yuga, our minds are very badly influenced by so many things, and somebody may give up the chanting and go away. He says, don't give up. No matter what problems the mind creates, chant anyway. Go on chanting the holy names of Krishna, and it'll help you. And 5 things he said, which if you do, he said that, in this world, nobody will trouble you. You can peacefully exist and you can chant the holy names without difficulty. That is based on the Trinadapi verse. He said that, I wanted to exactly read that for you, what he says. I'll just... it's called as principles of austerity. 5 principles of austerity. So he says here, my austere vow is constant devotion to the lotus feet of Sri Hari. In order to execute that vow, I accepted the following 5 qualities by my own endeavor. First, he says, I practice great humility in my dealings with everyone. Second, he says, I try to keep simplicity and purity prominent in all of my practical arrangements. For example, what is practical arrangement? Your food, your clothing, your shelter, your comforts and facilities and all. So in this, keep simplicity and purity. For example, pure prasadam only should be eaten. We should not eat anything outside. That is a purity. And eat simple prasad. Don't eat in such a manner that it will agitate the mind or it will put us to sleep. So like that, practical arrangements, you should have simplicity and purity, he says. Then in humility in my dealings with everyone, sakale samman korite shakati deho natayata. Tabe to gaibo hari nama sukhe aparada habe hata. In this song it is said, sakale samman korite shakati. I respect everyone. He says, I practice great humility in my dealings, and the respect comes later. I maintain extreme tolerance in all types of favorable or unfavorable circumstances. See, unfavorable circumstance we should tolerate. Then why should we tolerate favorable circumstance? Because sometimes when we get success after success, we may become intoxicated and proud. So tolerating that success means not to become proud. And tolerating unfavorable circumstance means having that fortitude, having that forbearance to tolerate all kinds of situations. One way of tolerating is to tolerate the lust within. Another tolerance is to tolerate the insults from outside. Yeah. I offer all respect unto others, regardless of who they are. Even if one is a Chandala, whoever one be, I respect all creatures, whoever they are. As I told you, Vaishnava respects even an ant. And lastly, I feel genuine compassion for all living entities and act accordingly. So these are the 5 things I will read out without giving an explanation. These 5 things so that it can be a take-home message for us. He says that if we do this, 5 austerity, we can be constantly devoted to lotus feet of Sri Hari. First one, I practice great humility in my dealings with everyone. Second, I try to keep simplicity and purity prominent in all of my practical arrangements. Third, I maintain extreme tolerance in all types of favorable or unfavorable circumstances. Fourth, I offer all respect unto others, regardless of who they are. And last one, I feel genuine compassion for all living entities and I act accordingly. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, और भक्त वृंदा की. Thank you very much.